I've been following the Wheel of Time reread on Tor.com.
Yes.
Almost since the beginning. And we were having a little discussion about when
There
I
are
discovered
no little discussions there. I've dropped by before.
Indeed. So I happened to notice you were coming here, so I said, hey.
Oh, okay.
This is news.
Mm-hmm. So say hi to Freelancer and Wetlander and all of those folks for me.
Interestingly enough.
First one.
First one I got a response from was Wetlander.
Okay.
And the second one was Forkroot.
Okay.
And the third, I think, was Jonathan Levy.
Okay. Let's do a few of these.
All right. Wetlander says hi, and she wants to know if Nakomi is an expert in Tel Aron Riyadh.
Okay, I don't like to answer Nakomi questions, but she's very persistent on this. I will say yes.
Interesting.
Yes, Nakomi is an expert in the World of Dreams.
Forkroot says, during Rand's trip through the Aiel Wayback Machine,
yes.
he sees an Aes Sedai come to relieve the Aiel of some of their most powerful artifacts, including a Sa'angreal.
Yes.
Please ask Brandon if that Aes Sedai was named Vora.
Ooh, flabbergasted.
No, I have to be really careful on these Wheel of Time questions because normally I can say, like on my own books, I can say yes or no or things like that. But on the Wheel of Time ones, I have to be very careful because there are often things embedded deeply in the notes or things that Robert Jordan said in like 1996 or things like this that I'm not always 100% aware of. And what I say never trumps what's in the notes or what Robert Jordan said. I think I can say yes on this one without having to contradict anything. But just in case, I will say Maria is going to have to vet that one before it's canon. But I think I can say yes on that one.
Excellent. One question that came up was how much harm comes to the participants in the 13 by 13 turning process?
You will find out more about that in future either volumes of the Wheel of Time or the encyclopedia.
Oh. Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for the questions. Are there other questions, or well, how much time do we have left?
Well, we got about a couple more minutes if there's any last questions.
If there's any last questions, we'll do that. And then if there's more time and you've got more, Mr. Tor.com reread, feel free to, or to grab me at my table. I will be signing from 2 till 4. And usually everyone shows up at 2 and gets their book signed, and then I'm done by 3. So from 3 to 4, I'm usually there, just can answer questions and things like that. And so if you have other questions and whatnot, that's the good time to come grab me. All right, let's do this question.
I was just curious, as a writer, what do you find the hardest in writing a book? Like, is it developing the characters, keeping them separate, or the plot?
For me, usually the hardest part is revision. Because getting like a book 90% of the way there is not easy, but easier for me. Getting that last 10% is the really hard part. And often it requires like knocking out walls figuratively, or killing your darlings and all of these sorts of things. It's really tough. And so excuse me, I find revision the most difficult part. If we're talking about the rough draft, usually the most difficult part of the book for me is about at, I would say, the right around the middle, right smack down. Sometimes it's the 1/3 part, sometimes it's about the 2/3 mark. There's a point in there where you're not quite to the ending yet, where all the exciting things that you've planned are happening, but all the cool stuff you've front-loaded on that you're really excited about the project and it's new. And right in there is a point where you're like, I need to keep this exciting and interesting, and yet now it's my job, right? There are points in writing where it's your job to get up every day and get a little bit more done. And you get all these other little projects dancing around in your head like, ooh, you could do this. Hey, here's a wacky magic system. Write a screwy story about that, Brandon. And all of this stuff. And you've got to remain focused, and you've got to, keep on working on the book and not let yourself get distracted. That's also somewhat of a hard part.
Hey, thanks.
Hopefully a simple one. Any more Mistborn stories in the works?
Yes. So for those who aren't aware, when I pitched the Mistborn series to my editor originally, way back when, I pitched it as a trilogy of trilogies, a past, present, future, where I would do an epic fantasy trilogy, and then I would jump forward hundreds of years and explore what happens with the magic in a modern day technology level setting. And then I would jump forward hundreds more years and allow the magic to then become the primary means by which FTL, faster than light, and space travel is able to happen. And so, the three metallurgic magic systems actually have FTL built into them. And so there will be a space opera series set in the future, because I was able to plan all this stuff out finally, knowing what I would be publishing and things. And so one thing that I ran into doing that was when I delved into the Way of Kings in the Stormlight Archive, I realized that I wasn't going to be able to get to that second Mistborn trilogy anytime soon, because I didn't want to have two big epics going on at the same time. I wanted one epic and then other things. And so what I did is I said, well, I'm going to try writing a short story in the Mistborn world. And this will be something exciting for people that, I can kind of sort of do some of these things and keep Mistborn going. And I tried writing this short story, and it flopped horribly. It was a terrible story. Wayne was in it, but otherwise it was awful. It just didn't work. Ooh, the Klingon's getting a phone call. Say hi to the High Counselor, whoever it is, Tell them I'm a great warrior.
Just grab the phone, start asking. Yeah. This is Brandon Sanderson.
Yes. Hello, is this Worf? I hear he was here like a few years ago or last year or something in full gear.
No, last year was J.G. Hertzler.
Oh, okay. Okay. Anyway, so back to your story. I tried to write this short story, and it was awful. And I said, well, it's just not working, but there's some ideas here that I want to expand on. Maybe I'll write something bigger. And I started working on it. I got about 3 chapters in and said, okay, this is a novel. Fortunately, this is a time where I'd built in myself a couple of months between Wheel of Time books to just do whatever I wanted. You can go back to my blogs at the time, and I said, people, I need a couple months to do something else to refresh myself. And so I went and I outlined a full short novel that became Alloy of Law. And this is an interim book, meant to be kind of more fast-paced, only focused on a couple characters, to deal with, I describe it as sometimes you want to go have a big steak dinner, but sometimes you really just want to have a hamburger. And Alloy of Law is the hamburger. It's faster, it's fun, it's meant to be a cool character interaction story with a mystery, as opposed to something that big. And so I plan to do some more of those. I've actually got about halfway through a sequel during moments of free time that unfortunately I can't continue because the Wheel of Time project, I would do it when I'd send a revision to Harriet, and she'd be like, I'll get back to you in 3 days. I'm like, all right, I'll work on this. And then when the revision comes back, I don't keep going on this. I have to work on the Wheel of Time. It's not something I can put off. And so right now with Stormlight 2, I have to do Stormlight 2. Deadlines are so tight. But I will eventually get back to Shadows of Self, the second Wax and Wayne book. And you will get some more of those to have some things going on in the Mistborn world until I get to the second epic trilogy, which will happen eventually.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to have time for our final question here.
Final question. Is this your final answer?
I was just wondering if you had one character that you really loved writing for and one character that you find as time goes on you don't like writing for anymore.
Okay. It's a good question. A lot of people ask things like this, so people are very curious about it. Usually, as a writer, you can't afford to not like characters. If you don't like them, then something's gone wrong. and yet at the same time, there are characters that you fall in love with, and it's just a delight to write. So you find yourself making excuses to write from their viewpoints, and some have a different effect on you. Robert Jordan was very much a method writer. Like, he very much got into a character's head. And Harriet tells this fun story of, like, she could tell when he'd been writing Pat and Fane, because he'd, like, slink into the house after doing so, and, like, have this expression and look on his face. She's like, "You've been writing Pat and Fane, haven't you?" And you do kind of get into characters' mindsets. And so there are some characters that, because of the place they are in the story, it's more painful to write them. And usually for me, these are characters who are having a difficult time doing what they should be doing. For instance, Gowan, in some of the Wheel of Time things that I've done, he's just, his entire future that he imagines for himself didn't happen. He completely went off track. He made some bad decisions in his life and is now paying for that in some of these books, and that's not exciting to write. He's still a great character, but it's not as exciting as, going and saying, "Okay, we get to write about Matt. What stupid thing is he going to do, and why is it awesome?" Because, that's Matt, craziness mixed with awesomeness. And so that can be more fun. I would say that in Wheel of Time, the most natural for me to write was Perrin. And the most the one I was most excited to write was Perrin. Because I'm like, no, people have been down on Perrin lately. They can't be down on Perrin. Perrin's awesome. And so I was excited about that. In my own books, I've got, it's like asking what your favorite child is. I can say it about Wheel of Time more easily because I was a fan for many years before picking it up, and so a lot of my fan leanings still exist. I've been forward with it. I know that people hate this, but I never was a big fan of Cadsuane, and I've tried to write her appropriately despite that and get into her head things, but she was never my favorite character as a reader, and that's an understatement for me yelling at her while I'm reading the books. But my own books, I would say the character who's been with me the longest is Dalinar. And finally being able to write Dalinar's story, he's from Way of Kings, is something that I really wanted to do. He's a character I started designing when I was a teenager. And very little is left of that original. I've grown and developed as a writer since then. But the core is still there of Dalinar. And of course Hoid, but I can't talk a lot about Hoid since he's not really a character that has done a whole lot yet other than be terribly mysterious. So there you are. Those are your answers.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's give a round of applause for Brandon Sanderson. So, of course, if they want to follow you, you can go to your website.
Yep, BrandonSanderson.com, Twitter @BrandSanderson, because Brandon Sanderson won't fit. I do answer, occasionally on Twitter and Facebook. But, and if you haven't read one of my books and you'd like to, my book Warbreaker is free on my website, DRM free download. It's a standalone epic fantasy. And my novella Legion, which is kind of a mystery thriller thing, is free on Audible for an audiobook download. Audible did that of their own volition. They paid me for it and then used it as a promo. So until January 1st, you can go download that. You don't even have to sign up for their service or anything and just get a free 6-hour audiobook. And it's really fun. So there you go.
All right, well, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, and I'm signing from 2 to 4. So.
Hal-Con.